Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I am so happy you're here today. If you are an Ashtangi yoga practitioner, this episode is especially for you. I think many of us have been, maybe searching, looking for answers since our beloved teacher, guru, friend, guide, Sharath Jois passed away suddenly back on November 11th here in North America, November 12th in India. And today, Russell and I are sitting down to chat with two fellow Canadians. I've known David Robson for over 20 years now. And we are going to talk to them a little bit about what it means to carry the wisdom of the Ashtanga yoga practice and the lineage into the future and how we can move forward. And there's been a lot of talk lately on the Ashtanga yoga grapevine through social media, through podcasts, through blogs, looking for answers. Different teachers, different people trying to connect and understand where we go now, collectively, individually, what wisdom grief has for us on a personal level, but also as a yoga community, an international yoga community. And so this conversation feels particularly important because David was one of the teachers who was certified recently in Mysore by Shruti and the Jois family at the Sharath Yoga Center. And Jelena also received her authorization. And we're not just sitting down to talk to these beautiful souls about this process and revealing how it happened for them, but we're touching on something that I feel is much more important, which is where do we find our strength as a community and the strength in shared memories and in connection to each other and a love for this tradition and this practice and what it actually means to be entrusted with passing on spiritual tradition, a spiritual practice, especially during times of transition, and how we can show up for each other and for ourselves as a place of comfort, as a place of belonging, as a place of support during these times when grief and mourning and uncertainty are prevalent. And so I hope that this conversation brings both a joy and a lightness to your heart. I hope it brings a sense of trust and certainty that whatever path you're on, wherever you are in the cycle of loss or in trying to find yourself again, or maybe you're unaffected by everything that's been going on, that's beautiful too. And I hope that this conversation leaves you feeling inspired and with a sense of strength and a sense of an ability to move forward as an individual, as a practitioner, as a student, as a teacher, as someone who loves the Ashtanga yoga tradition or lineage, and all of the teachers who have been blessed with this beautiful seed to share, to transmit, to honor, and guide others along this path. I know from myself having this conversation, it felt very inspiring and very healing. And I hope that for you, it also brings a deeper sense of unity and healing and fellowship to wherever you are in the world listening to this conversation. We love you. We wish you well. And we hope that you have community and you have teachers on your path that are inspiring and guiding and uplifting and holding that flame bright for the practice and for your own connection to yourself, to the inner guide, and to the teachers within. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony.
You want to introduce your co-host?
No.
I just want to say that this episode today is brought to you by Buble. Buble is Canada's soft drink, and it's the drink that Michael Bublé drinks when he wants to refresh himself on a Saturday afternoon like this one.
Well, we are here, in fact, indeed, with fellow Canadian teachers.
Oh, really?
David Robson from Toronto and Jelena. What's your last name, Jelena?
Vesic.
Vesic.
Thank you for pronouncing it for me.
Thank you for asking.
You're saying Jelena well, though.
Jelena Vesic.
Are you Canadian or are you just a visitor here like Russell?
I'm a permanent resident.
I'm a step ahead of you. I am a Canadian.
I'm definitely looking at becoming a Canadian citizen.
I would understand why.
Because I'm Jewish, and at some point they could ask to have me flown back so they can put me in a fucking camp. So I want to make sure the Canadian government says, well, he's a citizen and not just a Jewish permanent resident that we can get rid of.
Yes, then.
Yeah. I do have a lot of family in Ontario. My great uncle Alan is 101 years old, if you're listening, Alan. And a great fan of the show, Uncle Alan.
Okay, but this show isn't about you, Agnes.
No, we're talking about Canada. So you guys, where are you? You're in Toronto? Are you from there?
I am, yeah. I'm from near the suburbs, basically Toronto.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, and where were you born, Jelena?
I was born in Sarajevo. So today that would be Bosnia and Herzegovina.
The war was...
Yeah, the war was, it was...
Yeah. Were you there for that?
I was there for the first 4 months. Yeah.
Wow. And is that...
That's why we came to Canada eventually. We were there for the first, because no one really believed that it was going to happen. Everyone was in a denial. And I remember when the news started, I was like a kid.
Yeah, you must have been 8 or 9 or something.
9, yeah. Right? And you can't comprehend the idea of civil war as a kid at that time. And then the war started, and I remember it. We were always getting ready to run down in the basement of the building. And then eventually, we would be outside playing, and then you see the grenades flying over your head as a kid. And so my parents then made a call that we needed to leave. But the problem was, because it's a war, the men couldn't leave unless you had a medical exception. So then it was me, my mom, and my sister. We flew out on the very last flight, which was a cargo plane. So 500 people sitting in a pitch black on the bottom of sitting, because it's a cargo plane. There's no seats. And we left. And that night was the biggest kind of attack that happened in Sarajevo.
Wow.
When it really started. And then we lived in Serbia because my mom's sister lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my dad eventually managed to escape the war, he literally escaped to Croatia, because that's also where we had a lot of family. And at that time, it was few countries, including Canada, were bringing in the refugees from former Yugoslavia region and giving priority to people that have been separated because of war. Mm-hmm. So my parents applied for, I think, Holland, Canada, and Australia. And Canada was the first to respond.
Yeah.
I've been here
30 years.
Yeah.
I was in art school at the time, and there was a lot of work around the issues and plight of the people in Sarajevo.
But it's a beautiful city.
What did you like about it?
Have you been back there?
Many times. My grandma's there. I have friends there.
I don't know. It reminds me of a magical little fairy tale land. But it's also really sad. There's a deep sadness there. And I personally really love that.
That's why you married me, sweetie, isn't it? You have the same feelings.
There's this heavy, dark sadness, but there's also this magic in it, There's this.
And there's the magic as well.
Yeah, it is. When did you go? Do you remember?
It was back in 2016. So I guess 10 years ago now.
Yeah, but what month?
It was maybe March.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you need to go in like December if you really want to feel sad. Because you got to see all those like communist, brutalist buildings, and there's no sun coming out because we're down in the valley.
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure.
Gray and dark. And we were here, and David's like, why did I come here in December?
I can imagine, because it also, they kept the bullet holes from the war and everything. It's very, like, you feel it. It's
same in Budapest. Remember that building?
But even more in Sarajevo. It's a little intense. But
and it's so much better than the way it was. And there's like a lot of fighting about it, because a lot of people want to get things fixed up and as a way of moving forward. Because in a way, it's like a trigger. And for me, totally. Like, it's a trigger. But I can't even imagine for people living there how difficult that is. Yeah. But then on the other side, some people see it as a memory, as a reminder of what has happened, which just is true. And then there's a group of people that also use it to keep facilitating the hate and the division between the people, because it's their political advantage, unfortunately. Like, you know, a story repeats itself again and again around the world.
Yeah.
If you can harbor resentment and grievance, like, that person really needs sympathy, but they're often destructive to their environment.
Yeah.
What do you do with someone who is that damaged?
Like, how do you sympathize with them and show them kindness? But their behavior is also very troublesome. And I wouldn't say it's okay in any way, you know?
Yeah.
Do it that way.
I say this to people sometimes, like, well, you know, I have freedom of speech. I can say whatever I want. I can, you know, call you whatever I want to. It's like, well, you don't have freedom of hate speech. I think that's pretty well established.
Yeah.
We hope. The other thing I thought was really interesting about Sarajevo, just to talk about it a little bit more, was that it's like an Islamic country, but not the Islam that's like the desert Islam so much. It's more like modern day Islam. And
like Turkey?
Kind of, yeah, like parts of Turkey, for sure. I mean, Turkey depends where you go, but it felt very like nice, like not oppressive.
Like Turkey.
Yeah, like parts of Turkey.
Depends who you talk to.
Yeah, and what part you're in.
I feel the same about the United States, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Parts of it are fine.
Yeah, there's nice people there, I hear.
What attracts you to the magic darkness, David?
Of Jelena?
You seem very much in love. The two of you seem very much in love, and there's a real kind of special chemistry there. And every time I've seen you or heard about you, it's like I've seen the two of you having your special magic chemistry. And I'm wondering, so what attracted you to the darkness? What's there for you?
I think she hit it really well. And I didn't really...
You know, when we got like 2 years into it, and David's like, I thought you said you dealt with your shit. And I was like, well, David, this is generational trauma. It's coming up because I'm 38.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't suspect any of it was there at all. So
it's true.
It seems so nice.
What did your folks do, David? They're from Toronto?
My mother is an immigrant too, but she came over when she was a baby from England.
England?
Yeah.
Wasn't she like a month old or something?
Yeah.
Like 2
on the
months?
Queen Mary on a ship.
Yeah.
Oh, an Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
Oh,
and my father is born near Toronto, but of Scottish heritage.
Yeah, like Harmony. Yeah. Have you been out to Calgary, which is like the most Scottish city in the world?
He's been here.
Have you?
Once, I think.
Well, I've never been.
You've only been here once?
Yeah.
Oh, and I was fortunate enough to go for coffee with you on your one trip to Calgary.
Oh, that's good. That's done. That's bucket list marked. That's fantastic.
I didn't notice all the Scottish people that I didn't know.
All of the street names, and Calgary itself
it's a Scottish town.
It's a fishing village on the west coast of Scotland. So they came here and they settled the place, realized that there were natives and they were going to have trouble with that. And they've kind of been negotiating the space ever since.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm curious because I've known David for a long time. We met in Mysore in 2005, I think.
I have a follow-up question about his parents.
Okay, go for it.
I did want to know what your parents What does your dad do?
Well, he doesn't do much because he's dead.
Oh, yeah.
He was a social worker. Before that, this is interesting. He was a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of pieces fell into place there for me. Okay, good.
He left the priesthood. I've got a picture of him on the wall over here. He was actually a missionary for a while.
Oh, fantastic.
He's like wearing the white robes and everything.
Yeah.
Did he leave before or after you met your mother?
Yeah, he said before.
But we're not sure.
So now I understand you completely. So that's good. So you decided, like your dad, to take the cloth.
It's a calling. Yeah,
it's a calling. That's right. And when did that happen for you? Do you want to talk about meeting him in Mysore, or do you want to find out why he got there first?
Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Why did you go into yoga all those years ago when it was weird?
Why you?
Yeah, I was always into mysticism. I think it was Yoda, actually, Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure.
Yoda kind of turned a whole generation.
Turned a whole generation of us into a lot of
business.
Matthew Sweeney said that in his book. He said, it's because of Star Wars as I got into yoga.
Me too.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was into the whole special powers and then experience.
Yeah, learn to float is coming into my mind as you're talking about this.
Experiences with drugs.
Yeah.
And trying to recreate those experiences.
Yeah.
States of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. LSD was informative.
I just said this to Richard and Mary 2 days ago, that our beloved dear Rolf, he said to us, use LSD, kick the door in.
Oh, really?
That was the main advice I took from him. But I'd already done it, so it was like I got
he
that
said
one.
Once you kick down the door, then you do the yoga.
Yeah. But now you know where to go. Right. And if you don't know where to go, you're just like looking for good sensation.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. You should be terrified while you do yoga.
I haven't done it in a long time.
No.
Do it once, you don't need to do it again.
Or like 40 times. It's fine.
I think it kind of doesn't spoil you, but it turns you. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think this is in the same vein in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when the word yoga comes up to your mind, you see it like on a pamphlet on the side of a grocery store. You say, oh, that's for me. I'm going to go to that class.
Yeah. So I'd read about yoga, and yoga was emerging, in the 90s a lot more. It was showing up on the streets in studios. I was at university, U of T, studying comparative religion. They called it back then.
What's it called now?
Religious studies.
Oh,
because you can't compare them.
That's right. They're all unique.
Somebody told me that I should go to this class, that I would probably like it. And I did like it. It was very relaxing. It was Shivananda style.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And I remember that like lying down, and that deep release at the end. And Jelena and I have talked about this. We think a lot of people have that deep surrender that first time maybe, or, afterwards. And then they keep coming back hoping to get there again.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
But this was like, then sometime after he fell on the altar, broke the altar at the studio.
Yeah. Had a little accident, but they were very kind about it.
Is that your first class? You broke the altar?
No, it was like I was well in. I was like maybe 3 months or 4 months in. I fell on the altar. Yeah. But then from there, things were coming to Toronto back then, probably a little slower than some other places in the world, quicker than others. And so a Bikram studio opened just down the road.
Oh.
And I ended up getting to Bikram yoga.
Did you become a sex slave?
Almost.
So I never did the training, but that's how I ended up teaching yoga. The guy that owned the studio taught me how to teach.
Oh,
yeah, which involved a whistle and a stopwatch.
And tiny shorts.
And then I memorized the script.
Well, everybody was required to wear the same tiny shorts. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
Okay, but then when we met, you were doing handstands like on the beach with Ron Reed.
Oh, cool.
With Ron Reed?
Well, maybe, I don't know. You were with Ron Reed and then doing handstands and then the beach yoga or yoga by the beach.
Which beach? In India?
No, in Toronto.
You went to the beach in Toronto?
He knows what I'm talking about.
Hudson River? What?
Back in like 2000, because I kept exploring other styles at the same time. Ashtanga was also, in a form in Toronto with Ron Reed and downward dog yoga. And so I started going there, and they had a Mysore program as well. So around 2000, I started going daily to that. And then I became part owner at this beach yoga, which was a downward dog. Yeah, good memory.
Yeah, yoga by the beach.
Yeah.
But did you go see Sharath or Guruji and Sharath when they were on tour?
In Montreal. They came to Montreal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I saw them there. That was 2002. That was my first time meeting Sharath Ji.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then he said, come that year. And so that's my first trip to India that year too.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that trip when you went to India, your first time.
That was Lakshmipuram, 2002.
I started in Lakshmipuram, but they were just moving it over. So I went to Lakshmipuram, but they just shut down the Shala there.
Okay.
So they were opening Gokulam.
My first trip was probably like 2 months later.
I think you were there at the same time.
Yeah, we were there almost the same time. Was Kano there when you were there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same trip for me because I was on the tail end of her trip.
You were studying with Pattabhi Jois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Gokulam.
I was studying with Sharath in Gokulam too.
Oh, you were one of those.
Yeah. Yes.
He was like Sharath's first student ever.
Wow. Now more pieces are falling into place for me.
Todd was there. A year or two later.
Oh, man.
There was 12 of us. I stayed there for 4.5 months that first time just with him. And like slowly people were leaving. There was like 3 or 4 of us by the end of that trip.
You know Paul and Rochelle in Toronto, of course.
Yeah, we co-hosted Sharath Ji here in Toronto. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, they were old friends of mine, and I used to go and stay with my dad. And I stayed with him once in Toronto. And that season, when they decided to go study with Sharath instead of Guruji, they were living with me at the time, and it threw such a wrench into our relationship. It was so bananas, and then.
But it was 2000. I think that was 2000.
It was much later. But I'm just remembering them making that decision to transfer over to Sharath's
But I
class.
thought the problem was they couldn't sign up for the Shala. They got
that's right.
Like rejected and sent to Sharath's class.
They got rejected to Sharath's class, and then they also got rejected from Pattabhi Jois's pranayama class.
Yeah, because you had to be studying with Pattabhi Jois to do his pranayama.
And then I'm doing the pranayama class, but I'm doing it, and then I'm going home and practicing. And Paul was like, "Can you teach me?" And I was like, "I don't know if I can teach you." And it's like, "Oh, you're an asshole." It's like, "Yeah, I'm kind of an asshole." And it just kind of blew up a relationship.
Because I remember that trip because I got there in January, and it was before there was applications or anything like that.
Yeah.
And there was already, I think, 200 people or almost 200 people signed up for the main Shala.
Yeah, it was closed.
And we came in and we said, "Oh, we're here to register with Guruji." And Sharath's like, "Oh, he's full." And Saraswati came out and she said, "No, they're old students. They can register." And she pulled us into the And Paul and Rochelle were right behind us. And he said to them, "No, you're coming with me."
Ooh, that was brutal.
So, drama.
More the drama. It's more to the point, like to talk about for our listeners how bananas and Byzantine the drama and the politics were just between the family members.
Yeah.
Never mind all of the rest of us and our junior high bullshit. That
like 20 years ago.
20 years ago to the table.
A long time back.
Yeah. It was a lot to negotiate, you know?
Yeah.
And even like there in the scene, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, you know, you and Todd studying with Sharath, it was like a totally different kind of group compared to the people who were at the Shala. There was like discrimination involved. Like,
there was. You wouldn't eat with those people.
We were lessers.
We would go into the main Shala, the big Shala, on Sunday and do the lead class.
Yeah. Infuriating.
So weren't there. And then, it was a funny separation, though. I was totally identified with being his student. You know, I didn't think of it as being less because I had already decided when I met them in Montreal that I wanted to study with Sharath.
Wow.
He was my age, you know, and I could sort of feel his practice, and I was really into that.
Yeah. And the student always chooses the teacher. That's the truth of it. As a student, you resonate with the teacher, and you choose the teacher, actually. The teacher doesn't choose you.
No.
You choose the teacher.
Yeah.
When I arrived, too, because they were just opening up the new Shala in Gokulam, it wasn't open yet, so everybody was practicing at Saraswati's old house.
I lived there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody that even was going to go to the main Shala, I remember that year it was like really busy. There was 40 people or something. And before they had the rugs and stuff.
Yeah, it was massive. It was so full with 40 people.
Yeah. So we were all practicing together for 3 or 4 days or a week or something. And then the shallow opened and they went there and then we stayed.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was happy with it. It was different, but I was getting attention from
Sure.
Sharath.
But he was also falling asleep too.
Yeah, he would fall asleep during
He'd
that.
be so tired.
Yeah.
His like flip phone, you know.
How many people were in the room with you?
I think 12 max.
Wow.
Yeah. We were down the hill at Saraswati's place down there and then across the street from the Gokulam Chalet on the second floor,
Yeah. On the second floor there.
like in 2004 or 5. I was just talking to Todd Bowman about these years. He's such a good memory.
Oh my God, he has a crazy memory. He can almost memorize like whose mat was where. And like,
I think all the LSD muddled my...
It might have muddled some things.
Yeah,
yours
yeah.
is like gone.
I heard this about memory once, and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but if you remember your last holiday, this is the way that people who specialize in memory, they memorize like a list of things. If you remember your last holiday and your last family get-together, I would bet that everyone here in the conversation can remember where everyone was sitting around the table.
I can't.
What was your last holiday meeting? But I can remember our last Easter that we spent, the very last Easter that we ever spent with your family, because I will never do it again. I remember it was your dad, your right, you were to my left, then your mom, then Adam, then Amanda, then Ari and Addison.
But you could just be making that up.
Oh, no, I'm not making it up. But people who do memorization, what they do is that they'll put a card, like if you have to memorize a basket of fruit, it's like you put a card in place of each of those people. So banana, orange, apple, peaches. And like that's how you memorize a group like that, is you create a table that people sit around. And so the yoga room is the same. I can remember where people put their mats.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I think the more important thing is your emotional connection to the people. That's what makes memory actually cemented, is if it's an emotional connection.
Kind of sociopath doesn't have an emotional connection with people.
Yeah, but like you can't have an emotional connection with 80 people. So you have an emotional connection with 3 people in the room or 5 people in the room, and you remember where those people were because
And
there's a relationship.
And that's why family works.
Yeah.
So they use family.
Anyway.
A lot of these people we treated as though they were our family.
They were, actually. A lot of them felt like family. I'm sure you and Todd feel like family, too,
Brothers.
after practicing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a connection between two of you, like for sure.
Yeah.
Something.
We're brothers in that sense.
I'd like to talk about one thing, because you guys are phenomenally attractive teachers. I mean that in that students come to you. And I remember realizing this early on. I was staying at Paul and Rochelle's house in Toronto, and they were telling me about this guy, David, that had opened up a class.
Mm-hmm.
Paul and Rochelle had been there for ages, and they'd always had 10 students. Because every time they would get a new student, another student would just fuck off and leave and say, I'm out of here. Peace out. You guys are difficult.
Well, Russell.
And I love Paul and Rochelle. They're a little difficult. And so they can never get more than 10 because somebody would always just like, no, I'm fucking done with this.
Yeah.
And then like you opened a class and suddenly there was 50 people. In the
It wasn't
room.
even a pop-up class. It was a pop-up chalet. It was like a pop-up restaurant in the middle.
And it was like, wait, fucking 50? And like at that point, Paul and Rochelle, I think, really learned the lesson that it was them.
I don't know. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. That they gave up teaching because they realized that they had been hammering away. They just thought it was Toronto. They thought Toronto just didn't have the people to support a shala. You know, they're like, why don't we have 50 people? It's like, David is why you don't have 50 people. Can you tell us about that? What do you have that brings people into the room?
I remember contacting them because we tried to maintain a connection, even though we were in competition, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Your family.
Right.
You got to maintain the
Well,
connection.
So also, this is my herd, this is your herd.
Yeah.
But still, like when you know each other and you're in this Ashtanga world, it is like a family. Like even if you don't like someone, you're going to see them again.
Yeah.
You're going to end up at the same lunch. You're going to spend time with them,
Right?
Yeah.
especially back then. So it's like, how can we like work together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we co-hosted Sharath Jois together and
Yeah.
we were trying to work together. Yeah.
But what makes your way of teaching more appealing or more accessible for students? Like, are you less strict? Do you let people do handstands? What is it?
No, we were teaching exactly like...
She doesn't think so.
I've never met Paul, and
Rochelle.
David has had a reputation as being extremely strict.
Interesting.
And very much like, like there's the gatekeepers and this is how we do it. So he was known for like mimicking the Mysore setting as best as possible. So I'm just adding that comment.
Yeah.
It was very like and still the room is very strict and structured.
Yeah. It's softer now.
It's softer now.
Yeah.
But you were very
Yeah. I was always just copying. I mean, I wasn't speaking with an Indian accent and all that stuff. I was just trying to model it on exactly what he was doing because I figured that was my job.
Maybe people really enjoyed that too.
That's what I think they enjoyed. Yeah. Because I enjoyed going to Mysore.
Yeah.
You enjoyed it. We got so much out of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was like, well, the point of this place, we even call it a Mysore room, is to recreate that here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the reason why I came to the studio in 2009. So just a year after the Ashtanga Yoga Center of Toronto, opened
The main one.
the way it is now. And the reason why I came was because of this reputation. Like, it's a studio where you will learn it the way it is being taught in Mysore, India. There's no watering down. There's no fluffing things around. There's no putting stuff in or taking things out. And to me, like, when I was ready, like, I went to different studios as everyone else, and you try different styles, like looking for what speaks to you. It was one of David's students was teaching at this like generic kind of vinyasa studio, but was teaching half primary with the Sanskrit count. And so I was like, what is this? Like, I wanted that. And so that was the reason why I came to the studio too, is that I couldn't travel to India at the time. So this would be the next best thing. Like, I wanted to learn it the way you guys were learning it.
What was it that like attracted you to the tradition? I'm so curious because you said you're like dabbling in yoga.
I came from a dance background. I was a ballet dancer, and I come from Eastern Europe too. So I think part of like the discipline and the rigidity is what speaks to my soul. It's like comfort language in a way. But then I also was like curious about mindfulness practices. And if I was going to learn a mindfulness practice, I don't want the Western interpretation of it, like a true teaching.
Yeah.
And
Authenticity.
And so that's why I came to the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was certainly true for Harmony and I, is that we both were like looking for authenticity in the experience.
Yeah.
I think that's really the magic of what Eddie's Shala was in New York for a certain period. For like, 20 years. This was the most Indian you could get in the city of New York. You couldn't go into an Indian restaurant and have a more Indian experience than going into Eddie's place.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like your Shala is like that in Toronto?
It's different than Eddie's.
Yeah, but like the Indian experience, do people come in and feel like they're in India, or do they come in and feel like they're in like your universe?
My universe, I think.
Okay.
It wasn't, we were teaching the dogma of Ashtanga, but there isn't really, I don't have the statues and the...
Because you're a Catholic.
No.
At heart.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's interesting because you could have gone the other way. You could have said, because I'm Catholic, I want more color. I want more experiential embodiment in the room.
I'm not Catholic, but...
Are you Anglican? Are you Episcopalian? One of those
How
two.
does religious studies and comparative religions play into your yoga journey?
Yeah, I'm bewildered. That's what I am. I have no idea.
Well, and you got baptized in that, did you? That's good.
Baptized in bewilderment.
That's a book title, right?
Yeah, it is.
Write it down. Don't forget
Which one of us is going to write that book?
He is.
He's going to baptize.
Yeah, he already has books. He can write another one
called Baptized in Bewilderment. It's autobiographical. Obviously.
Autobiographical. Come on, David.
Is he writing it down?
Yeah.
That's good.
It's hot. That's good. You heard it here first, folks. I'm curious. Okay, so in your Shala, what's important as far as like the vibe? I think that's an interesting thing because because people are attracted to that, to the energy, to the vibe.
I think it was an easier sell back in 2000 and 10s. So it's become more difficult. So you've had to change it. It changed at the Shala too, though, in Mysore.
Yeah.
So when people were coming in initially, it was all about discipline. I was doing the like get up early thing and practice first and then teach. And then I was following up with people, like chasing them down if they didn't come.
Oh.
Yeah. Where were you?
Wow.
Oh, where were you? Why weren't you here? And
Yeah.
I was very, very driven.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
That's
in my
magnetic.
practice, but then in the teaching too, and in the delivery of it. And
Yeah.
then it was all about practice and commitment, right?
Mhm.
But it's changed now for sure. It's much softer
How and why?
because we've all grown up, right? The practice isn't the asanas and it's definitely not the sequence. And I think what was driving me was the idea of the discipline, and holding it was creating a lot of rigidity, you know? So
That's interesting.
I think it supported other people's rigidity too.
Yeah.
Accessed it. It was very super egoic in a way.
Mhm.
And so I could guilt people into being there or push them into being there. And it works.
It's an incredible
We had
energy.
150 people coming at one point in the morning,
Yeah.
but half of them would have hated me, you know, like they hate their father, you know, or whatever, or their priest.
Yeah, no, but it's true.
Yeah. And at some point it was just like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to be creating so much mental tension and judgment when you're doing the practice.
Yeah.
And
then we also got together, so that created
I
a lot
think it
of
was all
shit.
very similar. I think everything kind of led to the same spot. But yeah, when Jelena and I got together, then there was like a shift. There was kind of a big, what you guys would know what I'm talking about. Like a lot of things changed.
Yeah.
And then in a way, I couldn't kind of maintain that higher than.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like maybe less effective as a motivator because it wasn't like this, I don't know how to say it, like faultless kind of approach. You could be me. I can.
Oh,
I'm perfect and you need to strive for perfection.
This is the ideal. Yeah.
And so did you feel that the breakup and going with Jelena made you somehow vulnerable to that brush?
Yeah, for sure it did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember like there was days when he would go to the studio to teach in the morning and he couldn't do the opening chant. Like he couldn't stand in front of the people and do the chant, even though at that point we called it kind of like the purge. And it was so funny, like people that got really mad at David and I and that left were the same people that, you know, a few years before that were in the change room and were showing up every day to the practice, but then every day in the change room, like talking really negatively about David. And it was what David was talking about, like where he created that energy, but people were almost like fearing him and they were being guilted into showing up, and like the daddy issues start to show up around that. And so when him and I get together, these are the first people that start to kind of pass on strong judgments. One of the funny things is that some of those people have returned to the studio since, you know, and quite a few, because at the moment, what we were doing was reflecting something in their lives too, you know, either they were going through the same thing or they weren't feeling brave enough to do the same thing, to pursue happiness over what socially is acceptable and all of these things. But all that, I remember David like being in front of the room, not being able to do the chant or starting to do the chant and having a complete freeze, a chant that he's been doing at that point for like 20 years, 15 years, all of a sudden being like, I can't do it, you know, and feeling that kind of, you've let them down or.
Yeah, I had to find my place again inside of that because I was walking in with a mask before.
Yeah.
And it was comfortable and stuff. But then when I took the mask off, it took me a while to be okay with that too, you know? And then, the mask wasn't me. And what I was offering wasn't that mask.
Vulnerability, like it didn't come slowly. It was like right there, like in front of the room, forget the chant.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I love that you keep bringing up like this projection of the parents, because I think that's so natural for students to do. You know, we project our parent figure onto our teachers. Even when you're an adult, there's always like transference and countertransference and all kinds of interesting psychological dynamics going on. And even for you as a teacher, you take on that role as like the father or the mother. And when you do have this kind of breakup, a divorce, a change of partners, or a change of values or whatever, is happening, there's a sense of, like losing face in a way, but also having to redefine yourself in a role and within a relationship with your students, which can be kind of challenging.
To say the least.
Yeah, and you have to do a lot of like deep work within yourself to hold that space where you're like, okay, I have to ask myself some questions here and figure out who I am now in this new dynamic or in this new relationship in a way.
I'd like to ask you, because I'm kind of struggling with this myself as a
aging yoga teacher.
I'm not a yoga teacher, though. I'm your assistant when you call me to show up with you. And I retired as a yoga teacher. But there was a point where I was militantly orthodox and took so much pride, and so much a part of my identity was being a militantly orthodox person. That was, maybe funny and people liked, but like I was there to, again, as you said so beautifully, transmit what Sharath Jois and Sharath and Saraswati had taught me. But really, I was teaching Guy Donahay's class, but I was there as a flag bearer of Mysore,
Yeah, that's like that too, for sure. Sharath soldiers.
Right,
Sharath
soldiers.
Yeah.
And so, I've had a whole life and history of things that interrupted at points being an Ashtanga yoga teacher that were personal and professional. But coming back to the room now, when I come back to the room, I often encounter chaos, orthodox chaos, and understanding that, this is a different time and people now get to be themselves, and the role of teacher as a fascist dictator is a dinosaur. And now we're kind of building a kind of collective identity together, and we're engaging with what the student needs, which I hate. We went to a class in Sweden and everyone was exactingly orthodox. And it was like,
But in like a really soft, gentle way. It's really interesting.
So nice to that people just do what they're fucking told.
Well, you teach a lot of workshops and go and travel and see different people in their home environments around the world. And so I think you can relate. You go into some rooms and it's like abstract painting. And then you go into other rooms and it's like a perfect portrait.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
We vet the studios a little bit when we're invited. We look at yeah, we've ended up going some places where it was just too much, and they hated us. Like, they just couldn't click with it.
At some point, like I remember being in some places, and I was like, "Why did you invite us? And why am I here?" Because when I go over and I try to correct something, meaning like assuming, like you paid money and this is what you want from me, what you expect from me. And then they would get into a fight with me about why am I changing the position of their feet, or like telling, and I was like,
because you're being told to.
If you showed up like just for this weekend, let's do it this way. And then you do it whatever other way because you showed up here. And at first it was same as what you're saying, Russell. It was like really hard. And we were like being super orthodox about it, very strict, like telling people like, no, that's wrong. You can't do that pose. And why are you doing this pose? And then we realized like over the years, which is, I think, like just aging and wisdom, I think, I don't know.
Exhaustion.
We just now turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
Like when people are doing things that we think that they shouldn't, or let's say they're doing way more poses than they should, and we think like you're actually going to hurt your body, like then we just stop physically assisting at that point, and we still let them be there. And then we, talk, or we say something and we say like, well, if you went and you practice with our teacher, like this is how it's done. And if you come to our shala, this is how it's done. But when we travel, we definitely have had to let go and let the abstract painting just be abstract painting. Mm-hmm. I like that analogy. And otherwise it becomes too stressful for us, too stressful for students. And because they're not necessarily our students, we don't know the story behind what is happening and who has taught them that. And often people are doing something because a teacher has told them.
Yeah.
We've had to soften.
I think if we have enough time with people, we can convince them, sway them a
Yeah.
little bit, and like if it's like a few days or a week, you're not going to change things better to have a positive effect, a positive presence there than just spend the week being no, don't.
Yeah.
Yelling. Yeah.
Shaking fingers.
Yeah, that's what people always like. They think that's how we teach. But you know what was one very interesting? One of our students started with David like long time ago. And like David's studio, and I say David's studio, this is before I was part of it, was the very first yoga studio that they ever walked into. And it's funny, we have so many people in our room that they've never done anything but Mysore style.
Yeah.
We were the studio of the neighborhood. They walked in, and to them, it made perfect sense that you would learn pose by pose. The teacher would teach it slowly to you, all of these things that intimidate people coming from the vinyasa and different lead classes. And so the student of ours, she ended up she was traveling somewhere, and she went to the Ashtanga studio, but it was kind of Ashtanga interpretive, like an interpretive dance.
Yes, we know this kind.
Yeah. And she came back, and it was the first time that she did the practice, not at our studio. And she was shocked at how disturbed she was by the chaos in the room. That there was blankets and straps and blocks, and everyone's doing a different version of all the poses. And when she came back, she realized, she's like, the structure actually creates this like really safe and calm container, and how much she appreciated that this is the way we have been teaching and continue to teach. So this kind of going back to this idea of orthodox, where it can, if it's done in a proper way, it is actually very supportive.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an argument for that. I mean, I remember going to Richard Freeman's Mysore class. I remember going to Nancy Gilgoff's Mysore class as a very traditional, very like only Mysore India doing Mysore style
as it's
practitioner, teacher. And
for today's.
And being like completely dysregulated by the rooms because they were, let's say, so creative and expressive.
There's so much research going on.
So much research happening.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I feel like my teaching's evolved. I think I'm actually still a pretty traditional teacher when it comes to Mysore style. But I think like you, I don't hold a regular space. I'm always in someone else's room and someone else's space. So when in that capacity, I kind of actually enjoy that role where I just get to help people's practices a little bit.
Exactly.
And I'm not like there to change their entire lives. I think if I were to hold my own room regularly again, it would be a much stricter space than the one that I teach when I'm traveling and visiting and holding workshops and retreats,
Yeah, our home studio is still strict. I mean, it's not like it used to be in the sense.
Yeah.
I think the mindset behind it has changed, but basically the options are the same.
Yeah, it's just that the delivery.
Yeah. But there's something to this also. Like I always get a little perplexed when students can't do Ekapada Shirshasana or leg behind the head. Primary, I'm sort of like, okay, whatever. You can get through primary without doing it. But if you can't do Ekapada Shirshasana, you can't do Dvipada Shirshasana. You can't do Yogi Nidrasana. You can't do any of the first third of third series. Yeah. Like, where are you going with this? What's the point?
Yeah.
If we have people come visit us and then for a couple of days, whatever, we'll just welcome. And we make space. We just talk behind their back, but we don't talk to them. And then if they decide they're going to stay or if they're moving or something, they have to get with the program because that approach, it doesn't make sense from the rest of the room.
Yeah.
It kind of throws everything off in a way.
Yeah.
Like, well, why are they doing that? Some people have certain conditions and there's always exceptions.
That's true.
Yeah.
But in our room, for the people that are coming all the time, then we need to keep it organized. And
I think there's also something to maybe just like, at a certain stage in your practice, maybe you don't do Ekapada Shirshasana or Dvipada Shirshasana, and maybe you do Pincha Mayurasana or Mayurasana or some of these other postures that are more accessible for your body. But that's, as you're saying, a more case-by-case basis where you're really able to work with the student and also find out what their goals are. For me, I don't really see much point in third series postures if you're just doing yoga to maintain the health of your body. I don't know about you, but like as I've aged, I'm sort of like, yeah, they're fun, but like I don't need to do those in my daily life in a way, right? Like I don't need to, stand up with my leg behind my head. I don't need that range of motion to be a healthy human.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I think it's just driven too by what somebody wants. Like we do have people that are in their 60s still doing third series, but they didn't learn it in their 60s. They were doing it before. And
cute.
It comes to mind, then they've got degeneration of the discs in the neck and stuff. So they can't put it on their head anymore.
Yeah.
So now we're trying to figure out how to get into the poses without having that happen.
Yeah.
Without any weight on the head. But she wants to do that, and where she wants to modify, that's fine. And we're not really progressing so much now, but I'm impressed to maintain the practice. She comes every day. She's got an incredible practice. I had a terrible shoulder injury for a long time. I was really restricted, and I had to keep reminding Sharath that I couldn't do things like catching or whatever because it would make it so much worse.
Yeah.
But he also kept giving me poses too. Like he didn't, I would be like, really?
Wow.
Just do what you can.
Yeah.
And I would come every year and say, this is still bothering me. Should I just do primary? And he's like, no, do everything.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that was a big change too that happened, watching him too, like with age and experience, like the softness that came out in his teachings.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It
totally changed.
The way he was all like very like, oh, good, very good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Started talking to you in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he's pulling you and he's good. Oh, so good. And I'm like dying, my arms out, like heels off the floor. I'm like, this is a shit show. He's like, very good. It makes sense that watching him.
We changed too. Yeah. I guess we're still reflecting the shala.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. One of the things that really kind of helped me was I was reading Deskachar's book, and he was talking about krama and thinking about how I organize and structure the Mysore room in terms of krama was helpful because I couldn't stomach how I could have different standards for different people. It's like my old student, she sits there in the corner, Rethel, and she listens to her earpods. She listens to music. It's just the way it is. And then another student is going through a highly rigid orthodox structure to get through third series. And then I've got like Sydney. And then I've got Frank, who's just like struggling in the beginning part of second series because I felt like he needed some backbends. I'm like, how do I rationalize this to a guest teacher who's subbing for me without being sick to my stomach?
Yeah.
And then Deskachar taught me how to, in that if you think about that, Pattabhi Jois and Sharath were masters and really specialists at Vinyasa Krama of a perfection system, Vinyasa Krama, perfection system. And then you have some people in the room who do perfection system, and they're probably going to teach yoga at some point. And they may even take over the shala for you at some point. They really need to know. And then you've got somebody else who's 70 years old and needs to do some backbending. Maybe they're doing a krama for their health. And Sharath would even talk about this. What do you do for somebody who's sick? And you have to devise something for them that's sick. You have to devise a krama for them because they're sick. And then Harmony and I are in your room, like we're doing maintenance krama, sama krama. We're doing that kind of krama. And then suddenly you have a room that you can explain to somebody and it isn't embarrassing. And so there's people are doing different kinds of Ashtanga yoga here in the same room.
Yeah, I think it just takes a lot of knowledge to be able to offer that, to deliver it well.
Yeah.
But as young people know, we didn't start that way, did we?
No, because you have to learn the orthodoxy first. You have to learn all your scales and get really good before you can try to play jazz or whatever. You do the work and then it comes very, very naturally as a maturation of your experience teaching all those years.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what are you saying now? Because with Sharath's death, and even I found myself in these situations where I would say, in Mysore, and then I'm like, pause, and then I'm like, well, this is how it would have been done.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. How are you guys dealing with it? How are you handling it? How are you going through that kind of transition?
Yeah. I know that's what really shook me so much too, like that I couldn't point to the room, in Mysore as a thing that was happening.
Yeah.
And kind of use that support, that structure of saying, if you go to Mysore, then
this is how it is. Yeah.
So I'm right because that's what your experience is going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for that to be taken away, it all becomes like a little bit arbitrary and detached, ungrounded.
Yeah.
Ungrounded is a great word.
It's like, well, why is it like this? Now I'm that teacher that I wasn't crazy about 15 years ago that would say back in the 70s when we did it this way, that's why, I don't want to be like, well.
But you don't have any choice now.
Yeah. That's why we're devising our own system of yoga.
We're not that organized. Like, even if we really wanted to, we're too stupid to do something.
No, but so it's amazing because that sentence is only absurd to the four of us.
Yeah.
To anyone else listening, it's like, yeah, okay, so now you devised your own system. Good. That's what everyone does.
Yeah.
But it's no way we're going to do that.
Again, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Of course not. But yeah, it's such a good observation that's the exact same kind of feeling that I keep running up against.
And it's so funny because for the first, it's not funny the way we've been laughing at funny stuff that's not funny. For first little while, like it would make David cry. Like that question, like few times he teared up and got really emotional and like shaken by it. That now he can't make that reference. You actually can't say that anymore.
Or to keep using the past tense. Like
This is the way he was teaching.
I think another really kind of horrendous problem we now have is that if you have your own room and you find there's always somebody in your room that, ooh, they're special. They can do everything. They're going to learn everything.
This happened to Jelena.
Maybe, but like right now, like you get somebody like Jelena in your room.
Yeah.
And you say, and so you're going to be a star too, just like me. And I'm going to send you to Mysore when you're ready. We can't do that.
Yeah.
You could say that to Jelena. You could say,
you're mine now forever. You're special. You're going to stay with me forever and take over this when I'm gone. Yeah. That's what else do you have to do?
Mm-hmm.
But he could bring her to Sharath's workshop and then to Mysore. And then now it's like, okay, I'm not your teacher. Sharath's your teacher. It's like a whole...
You pass it over.
Transition thing. Yeah. Where do you send your special students now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't send them to New York. New York's a hellscape. You're not going to send them to London.
Yeah. No. I mean, are we talking about like asanas and like moving through the sequence someone wants to?
I want to be authorized someday. I'm Jelena. Where do I get my special degree?
Yeah, it's to be determined.
Or is it the end? Also, that's another question. Like, you've been teaching for a long time, David, and you've seen this evolution of yoga teaching. I think teachers get paid less now than when I started teaching in 2002.
Sure, yeah. More of them, I guess, now.
Is even being a yoga teacher or being authorized, what does that mean? What does that mean for you guys? What does certification mean? What does authorization mean?
I don't know that certification maybe changes things. Like authorization, like where I was and then getting authorized, that doesn't really change. Maybe because I was already teaching. Maybe it plays differently for someone who wasn't teaching and then they would have gotten authorized and then that gave them like a confidence or permission or whatever to then step on that path. Mm-hmm. For me, it was more special because like the way it came about. And I think it's more special that it happened because he passed away. Mm-hmm. And he told me in Miami when I told him, because I wanted to ask him if I could come to Virginia and maybe just come for the class in the morning. And he's like, but why aren't you doing the whole thing? And I said, because I'm not authorized. He's like, what?
Yeah, he really didn't know sometimes.
You're supposed to ask. Like, he can't keep a track of that many people. So getting authorized this season for me was more of like, because it was known. Like, he told me in Miami, he's like, well, come to Virginia and in February, you're going to get And so it was more
So sweet.
emotional and special because of his passing.
Do you think it was emotional and special because you already had his blessing, though? Do you think it was like meaningful because he said to you, like, oh, what? Like, you're not, of course, come to Virginia, which was like the special training for only authorized people. Obviously, he considered you authorized already. And
Yeah.
this was just like a symbol of that emotional connection that you had to him. I don't know. You tell me. I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't know. David kept like the last 2 years, like he was saying, go ask. And I'm always weird about asking anything. And I always also say this, not because I'm so humble. I'm just weird. And like, I won't ask David to do things. I'd rather be overwhelmed and then get mad at him than like, than ask for help or ask for something.
Yeah.
And so David's been on me like, go ask. And then this season, David said, if you don't go in, I'm going to go in for you and ask. Because he thinks you're authorized. I've always practiced in the earliest shift, which is, he just had it all. So it makes it, I don't know, maybe to me makes it special because I had that conversation with him in Miami while we were eating ice cream, and just his reaction when I said, because I'm not authorized. And he's like, what? Like, then last year, he gave me his number so that I could send him pictures of tigers when we went on safari.
Yeah.
And so I had his number. So he's like, well, why didn't you message me and tell me? And I was like, I'm not going to message you about my authorization. Like,
Yeah.
no, I so
cute.
I was like, I have your number to send tiger photos. Anyway, so for me, that's what made it really special. But I don't think really teaching wise that it has had like a big impact on me being able to book more workshops or get more students. Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, no.
But no.
No. I'm curious even for certification, David, because I mean, you two were very popular teachers before you were authorized and before you were certified, David. I mean, you already had like, you know,
as many as you want.
Yeah, like everything there. You had the books, you had the videos, you had everything. What does certification mean to you? What does that symbol mean?
Right? Like, I mean, I don't know how to say it. Like being popular on social media or teaching the workshops around, and it's your peers' recognition, or your not even your peers, the students. You know, like that you've created something that people want to get, and so that's good that you feel good about that. But it's different, Sharath Jois saying, certifying you.
Like, there's a validation there for you personally for all the work that you did that was only visible to him.
Well, he didn't certify me, right? So
did he ever? He didn't ever say that he would do that?
He never mentioned it.
Can I ask, how far along were you in advance
with him? Ganda Barandasana. Well, really, Viparita Shalabhasana.
Sure.
Funny story.
Oh my God! Oh, that's such a good story.
I've been there for he was being really sweet to me, like all for the last little while, kind of making up for all those years when he wasn't.
So strict.
And I was scared of him for a long time.
Sure.
Still was at the end a little bit too. And then, you want it, like Jelena, like you want to be given something, but you don't want to ask for it because it changes, right?
Yep.
So I wasn't chasing him for poses and stuff like that. But I think too, like, a bunch of his older students, he stopped kind of
paying attention to, for sure. Yeah.
In the same way, but I don't blame him too. I'm not pretty to watch. So I was doing that, and I was kind of proud of myself last year, not this season in Mysore, obviously, but the last year there. And I didn't ask him if I could split, but I'd been doing all of intermediate and all of third up to Gandabar for a few years.
Yeah.
And every year at the end, I'm like, when do you think I could split? But I always wait till the end of the season. And every year he says next season. But I never just split. I wait for him to tell me that season, and then he never does. So I ask again. So I did it again. And he was standing there. I'd waited, you know how you do.
Yeah.
Waited for him till I knew I was in his eye line. And then I did a beautiful lift up into Viparita Dandasana, and then Viparita Shalabhasana. And then I'm holding it. And then I come down and whatever. And then he's not saying anything. So I get up. I'm waiting for him for back bends, and he comes over, and I'm like, when do you think I should split? And he's like, well, what pose are you on?
I just saw it. You just saw it, dude.
And he's like, Viparita Shalabhasana? Yeah. He's like, Viparita Shalabhasana.
Yeah, he wrote it out for you.
Yeah. And he's like, and he just did that, He didn't say anything. And then that was it. That was
like sums up your relationship too.
That was where we left it.
Wow.
That's insane. That's so funny.
Practices. Like way back, I used to go further and, my own.
Yeah.
But yeah, with him. And yeah, so that's where I was finished. Yeah.
Wow.
I guess that's the last pose I got from him.
Yeah. And so how did it come about in Mysore that Shruti offered it to you? I was told by Usha. Jelena was being authorized, and we all knew that kind of. But there was other people being authorized too. So, and Todd got certified. Todd got certified the month before we were there. So we were there for February. And then I think it was about halfway through the month, and Jelena went up to the office. She was going to go get her certificate, whatever authorization thing. And Shruti told me, go up and see Usha. It's all been organized. And I was like, what? And then
we just assumed it was like I thought, my paperwork.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And so then I was just sitting there, and then Usha did everything with Jelena and then handed me a piece of paper and said, put your name down. You're being certified. And I was like, what?
You said, what? Are you sure?
Yeah. So I was surprised.
Yeah.
And it was so funny in the office because he just kept repeating. He's like, but what? Usha, are you sure? And Usha's like, yeah, like we've talked about it. We don't know who's the we, but Usha said, we talked about it. It's been discussed. And David's like, really? At some point, I was like, just shut up. Let's
sign it and get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. Before they change their mind. Take it and run.
What does it mean to you? I'm so curious. What did the whole situation, how did you feel when that happened?
I feel very ambivalent because one, it's not from Sharath. It'll never be from Sharath,
Yeah.
And that ship has sailed in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, me and the other people that that it was given to were all surprised.
No one knew. Apart from Todd.
Thinking about it afterwards, like we went in February to support the Shala.
Yeah.
To support our community and Shruti and the family.
Yeah.
But we went there because that's where we've always gone. We built our lives around this, and like, what are you going to do? Say no? Or,
no.
It's true. Honestly, I think anyone, I mean, if I'm honest.
Wait.
No, you be honest.
I'm about to be honest.
You be honest.
If I'm sitting there in that room and Shruti and Usha are saying, we want you to get certified, I'm going to ask them how much.
Really?
How much money?
If you want me to pay 10 grand, no.
10 grand. Yeah.
Anything less than that, I think we can have a discussion.
As far as I know, the price hasn't changed in all these years.
As far as I know, it really depends on who you are. Yeah, it really depends on who you are. The price has changed. For Tim Miller paid $150. John Campbell paid $3,000. There's a big range. I know people that paid 10 grand.
I think the going rate's $5,000 though.
The going rate is $5,000. And so like, if you want me to pay $5,000, I really got to think about it.
I think you'd do it. I think you would do it.
I don't think I would. I don't know.
But you're not teaching anymore either.
But even if I was teaching anymore, I know it's not going to make me any more money.
Well, no, it's not.
I went there to support the place in Shruti. And in a way, she's chosen how we're supposed to support her. Maybe she regrets that. I don't know.
Man, but support her. She's a multimillionaire in India.
Not financially. I mean, I don't think that's the motivation there. I hope not.
Okay, so that's what you mean by support.
Yeah, that's right.
Energetically.
That's energetic, but it's financial, energetic support.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that she's doing that for finance.
I can't imagine that either. She doesn't need the money.
She doesn't need the money, and that's not what she was doing there.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a kind of, the money is significant, but it's a token symbol in exchange for this validation.
It's the same, as far as I know, it's the same price that was being asked, say, last year or whatever. So that was all part of that package.
But it's still it's a token gesture. It's not like $100,000. that's going to actually make a difference to someone.
No, exactly. I mean, I guess she's still taking it, but I also think it has to be something. You have to pay it, I guess, to get that. That it doesn't mean anything.
And authorization is thousands of dollars
true.
now. I paid $150 for my authorization.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So it's the scale from authorization to certification is not gigantic. It's not $100,000.
Now Jelena paid, I don't know, what was it?
25.
2,000. It's been 2,000 for a few, I don't know,
sure.
maybe 10 years now.
I don't know. I mean, she is looking to create support, like more support and a network of people that are endorsing the Shala and trying to hold the community together. And that's how I understood it.
Yeah.
But I did know, okay, it's complicated.
But I think this brings up an interesting point because for you, I don't really think that certification does anything.
It hasn't.
It validates. Well, not from Shruti.
No, any certification, even if it's like direct from Sharath, like economically,
but no,
popularity. No, let me finish.
Still get it from Sharath. It does something for him.
No, but I want to know for him because you said yes, and I think also anyone in your situation probably would have said yes, who is there practicing.
But just put yourself in the shoes that you went there.
Yeah, that's very different.
Someone tries to give you something.
I wasn't going to do that either.
Yeah, you weren't there.
I wasn't going to go there.
Exactly. If I was there practicing in February and I was not certified and I had just been with Sharath when he passed away in Virginia, and this was offered to me, of course I'm going to say yes.
Yeah,
100% I say yes every time.
Yeah, but I'm not that person who's in that position.
Yeah, that's not my question. But then my question is, what does it mean to you? Because I think that's the most important thing. Because, I mean, it seems like it would be emotional and significant.
It is emotional, yeah. It's significant in a different way. Like, I don't know. I don't think it changes anything for me in the sense of what I was doing before in a business sense. Or even, in our community, there's people that are going around and teaching and are known and stuff. So this hasn't changed that. In any kind of positive way.
Has it changed it in a negative way?
A bit of a target on me.
That'll pass.
Yeah, it'll pass.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking is, okay, going forward, there's a responsibility to it, right? This was the idea of it. And it's certifying your responsibility. My responsibility is still to that Shala.
Yeah.
And so going forward, that's what I'll continue to do. And I would have anyways without the certificate.
Exactly.
I would just like to say that I know guys like Russell Kai got certified after doing Kashibasana. He's doing the third posture of third series and got certified. How far along you are in advanced, whatever. What I know,
people, certified that didn't finish third.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what I know about you and your stature in the community and your dedication to Sharath and your unwavering loyalty to him as a teacher, it's completely deserved. And you should be validated to have that certification. And that makes complete sense. And I assumed that he had said, oh yeah, you'll get certified next trip. And then he died. That's so, but I have no doubt that he would have eventually.
I think eventually.
A year or 2 years.
Maybe 20 years, Ditch.
Maybe 20 years.
Maybe.
Sometimes, he's difficult with people. Yeah.
We had a joke that I would have gotten.
Yeah, she was going to get certified before we.
Probably.
You would just skip authorization and go straight to certification.
Yeah, good.
But thanks, Russ. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, that's really kind.
It's deserved.
We've both been in the same community as you both for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's sometimes people receive certification and you're like, what? The fuck? No, literally.
Wait a second.
Right? I don't know if you've had that reaction, but I've had that reaction several times.
Yeah. But it was also like, well, that's not my choice.
No,
exactly. So you're just like, okay.
And there's people that have finished fourth and not received certification.
Exactly. Yeah.
And have said, what the fuck?
Arbitrary quality to it. And you might think or whatever, oh, well, I don't know what that's about, but okay. You wouldn't think I'm going to write a stern letter to Sharath.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to make a podcast and attack his wife on,
I mean, and there's amazing practitioners, like asana perfect practitioners who never receive certification.
Absolutely.
So
we both know them. We all know them.
So when I saw on social media all of the certifications that were being handed out and the certificates of friendship and support, I don't know what they call.
What do they call it? Dedication?
Dedication.
Oh, certificate of dedication. That's nice.
That is
Nice. I like it.
That was apparently his idea that he was going to.
He did
this
one last
year.
year, apparently.
Yes, one of the people that received it was told by him in Miami that they were going to get it. Like,
That's amazing.
he wanted to celebrate people in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's so
Allison
nice.
totally deserves that.
But there was no one. I mean, when I saw it, I initially was like, what is going on? This is crazy.
Yeah.
People are being certified by Sharath's ghost.
Yeah.
Right? And you have your reactions, your emotional reactions. I mean, it is like a confusing kind of emotional landscape to cross because you're like, well, what does this mean? Is it valid? Does this make all the other certifications invalid? Or does this, what's going on? Right? So you have an emotional reaction, of course.
Sure. Yeah. I think I would have, if I hadn't been there and I was seeing it, I would have felt the same way. Totally.
But then I looked at the people and I was
you
like,
can't fault the people.
and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
What the fuck? This doesn't even really matter because I know all of these people.
Yeah.
They're my friends. All of the people that were acknowledged and received certificates
Yeah.
on that stage that I saw on the social media post, I know how much they were dedicated to this practice. I know how many years they put in of like blood, sweat, and tears, money, and trips to India, and leaving family, and leaving friends, and leaving their shalas, and just like, it's hard because people sometimes don't understand that kind of sacrifice unless you've done it. And when you've done that kind of sacrifice and the decades, because it was decades for everyone there involved of like basically almost annual trips for almost everyone there, right?
All of your wealth.
I mean, you can't, I don't know. I was like, I don't think there's an argument. They deserve it. They deserve to be recognized for this. And yeah, are there other people who could have been recognized? For sure. 100%. Other people could have been recognized and possibly will be recognized. I don't know.
Exactly. Hopefully they will be recognized as well.
I was curious about this because my first impulse was like, but there's so many, like hundreds of Asians who have spectacular practices that we don't know their names, who are also probably like around the same place that Tim is in his practice or Susan Hounsel, like, how are we going to, does anyone remember them? Like, when are they going to get their due? But I guess my concern were the choices by the judicial board, were they arbitrary? And just like, these are people we know, but like, you don't speak Chinese, maybe you don't know those people. Like, there's hundreds of them that are amazing.
Yeah. And they still can't come to India, right? None of the Chinese students, unless they have a foreign citizenship, they're still not able to get the visa. That's why few of our friends that we know have come all the way to Miami because that was an opportunity for them to come and practice with them, because since COVID, the relationship between India and China, they're not able to come.
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like, and that's like a large population of the student body from the Shala. And so none of them are still able to come there at all.
I don't really worry about it anyways, because it's not up to me. None of it is up to me.
Yeah.
And it never wasn't up to me when Sharath was living. And it's not up to me now. It's not my purview. No one's asking me or consulting me.
No rule they ever.
No rule they ever.
I'll give an opinion.
No, you're a senior member of the community.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, and you're certified. I would think that you would be someone that someone would ask their opinion.
Maybe if that's the way it goes, it won't even be us that sets that up. Like none of us have any kind of ownership of those processes. And we're not even necessarily owed an explanation. You know what I mean? Like
That's true.
I think we need to give Shruti space and time, like she's got to figure out what she wants to do that way. But it's all up to her. It's not up to any of us.
Yeah. Cause at the end of the day, she owns the Shala. It's literally her property. And if she decides to continue to invite people to come practice there, that's also up to her and her
And
prerogative.
it's up to them if they want to go.
Yeah, that's right.
And if we're going to go, be good.
Yeah.
Go there and be good and do your practice. And
Yeah, totally. 100%.
In the same way, the Shala in Gokulam or the Shala in Lakshmipuram was exactly the same mirage. We created the value that it had. We created the value of Guruji's blessing. And then there was some negotiation and people started creating certificates and authorizations. And then we assigned value to those. And it was all our doing. And so, if people want to do that in Shruti's airplane hangar, then let's admire how the epic unfolds.
Because the student picks the teacher. That's at the end of the day, the student picks the teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
When we were there in February, like it was very difficult time, but in another way, it was like really beautiful. And when we realized that the Shala was going to be open after all, we just said, yeah, we're going to go. We were supposed to go in February and we said we would go. And the energy in the Shala was really beautiful. And it was very different. Of course, it was going to be different, that it wasn't going to be the same. But it was beautiful in a way that we came not knowing that there would be any assisting. Like we signed up that we were coming when we all received the letter saying that we all show up and everyone's on their mat. No one's assisting anyone. There's no teacher. There's nothing.
That made sense to me too. Like,
and that we were like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. We go and we show the support for the community. And when I speak of the community, like when you think about how many people in Mysore and Gokulam depend on us to come and have made their livelihoods around having these bursts of bubbles when the people come from abroad and they go to the restaurants and the shops and buy the food and rent the apartments. And that supports their family. That supports their livelihood. So it wasn't just about supporting the family, but it was supporting like the community that's created around the Shala. And so we showed up with that intention. And I think everyone else that did showed up with that intention. So there's that. Then there is Shruti and the family who, I mean, she has just lost her husband. And yet she is showing up, opening the Shala and holding the space for us, you know, in a way that we can come together and practice. And there was something so beautiful to practice in the room. And you look around the room and you're like, oh, I know that face. And I know that face and I know that person. And it felt really healing. And there was days when the whole Shala was just crying. And then there was the days when we were all giggling. And then on top of that, the month before, they started coming up with this kind of assisting system and watching people and, you know, even adding poses on. And so then in February, that continued. But none of that was planned when the doors were open. It's very organic. And it kept growing into what it was in February. And then like Todd messaged me to say that he was going to get certified, which was like a total shock to him as well. But we all were there when Sharath said in Miami. So we knew that part was coming. And then I remember saying to David, I was like, if Todd's going to get certified, I listed the people.
She did actually. She called it.
I called the people. I said, then these are the next people that need to be certified. And David's like, why do you say that? And I said, the time. Like, it's just about the time. Like, how many trips have all of you taken? And we're not even talking about 1 decade, like all 22 years or plus of people showing up. Like, does that not deserve a celebration? And for me, the way I understood that was being done in a way of this very sad moment, and it's still ongoing. There was like this little burst of celebrating his legacy by acknowledging people in different ways.
Yeah.
Certifying certain people and then also acknowledging senior students that have been coming and dedicating their lives. And to me, like being a student in that room and watching it happen was it felt like unifying and uplifting.
Yeah.
And so
there's something too about maintaining the viability of the Shala by keeping it as a place for students coming even, and new people coming where there's something that they're going to get from being there. You know, so keeping that that option open of giving authorization or certification or new asanas, that keeps it a living space, right? Like growth can happen there and change can happen. And maybe first, I know some people, it's happening too fast. It was too soon for that I understand that, but at the same time, I can understand the concern as well. Like that would motivate Shruti to want people to see, look, we can do this. There's a reason to come here and we can maintain this. We'll figure out a way forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting if someone did that interview. There was quite a few first timers, which I was most impressed with. Like that after all of it, they didn't cancel or go to another shala, which some people did do, go to one of the other places in a competition. Yeah. But the people that showed up for the first time, and so many of them approached us at the end of the trip and they're like, this is our first time and we can't wait to be back.
Yeah.
And they absolutely loved it. And to me, it was like,
awesome.
But what did you love? Like, tell me.
Yeah, what was it? Yeah. I got to study with Keenan McGregor. That's awesome. Who wouldn't love that?
Part of, like, you're surrounded by senior teachers. Like, there was, and they're in the room, they're walking around. Some of those people, you've seen them maybe online. You've studied with some of them because a lot of first timers in the shala have come and studied with all of us somewhere abroad, and probably what inspired them in the first place to make that trip. And so for some of them to say, like, I felt like that was like the most important feedback for the shala is that the first timers loved it because it made sense we would.
For me, like when I went to Mysore, it was not the same as being in a real Mysore room in New York. And it was like nobody's paying attention. No one's adjusting, this is a chaos in here. And I go back to New York and I get some real work done. And because you're getting adjusted a lot, you're getting a lot of attention in your practice. But that didn't stop me from going back to Mysore year after year after year because it's really kind of amazing being in Mysore, being in India.
Too, right? You're doing a different kind of work.
Oh, for sure.
I think we had different experiences because I never had a teacher, a regular teacher. I never had a room to practice in. So
not a real one.
I didn't have any room. I was just like by myself and I was teaching all the time. So I was always practicing by myself in the morning or with fellow teachers when I was at the retreat center, we practice together in the morning. But there was no like Mysore room for me unless I was in India. And so that was the only.
Wow. So you've never really experienced it.
I've never had a Mysore teacher outside of Sharath and Guruji.
You never really,
So
never had one. Okay.
Like for a long period of time, like over like the longest would be a couple of weeks, at like in Goa, Purple Valley or something where I'd practice with a teacher for a couple of weeks. So there's something magical about being in that room with other practitioners, having that routine, not having to go to work or do anything else, just like living the yoga life, doing the chanting and doing the studying the philosophy and
learning an instrument.
Yeah, eating the food.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure, it'd be an amazing experience for a first timer. I'm not surprised.
And being in the community. I mean, there's something so powerful about being in this with this group of people. I mean, for us, I don't know, maybe we were lucky that we had smaller groups of people when we were coming up because the relationships and the friendships and the connections, like what we were saying at the beginning, it is like family. Even if you don't see someone or talk to them, or even if you're like, oh, that's just so-and-so, or like, you have all these like feelings, different feelings about people. At the heart of it, there's a shared lifeblood that there's respect there in some way, typically, even if you're like, oh, that person's insane. They're crazy. I don't know what they're doing.
Like my uncle Rick is also insane and crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you feel them, them, and you're like, yeah, we're going to go hang out and have a beer or whatever.
The joke that I would make, and I love Susan dearly, but the joke that I would often make, people would say to me is like, well, what do you think the community is going to think? Like, you're getting a divorce. What is the community going to think? And I would say to them, like, you mean Susan Housel? And that's what they mean by community. They mean she's the one that's going to be like telling everybody, what Russell did. And it's like, yeah, that's what the community thinks. what I'm trying to say is that the community is a construction that we make. And it's really just our friendships with our people and from our particular period of time. And that's our community. But what, in some way, you've posited or created a construct where the community is the thing that needs to do something or be something other than it's just your own circle of friends. And that there's a responsibility to this construct that we have to have government socialist intervention, because we are Canadian, on the salvation of this community, right? So, do you think so? And what is our responsibility, if so?
Well, I think it's going to change who you are in the community. Like any community, different people have different roles. The ones of us that have been around for a long time and are putting ourselves in the position of being teachers, then our role is responsibility, like is how to carry things forward, in a positive way and continue our own studies and things like that. And then if you're newer to the community, then you get to kind of enjoy the ride and learn, be supported by those people, Like, it's not one of those things where everyone has to pay dues. I mean, we all pay our due by practicing, right? Getting on the mat. But that's what kind of gives us membership. Yeah. But I think everyone's got different roles in that sense, if I'm understanding the question properly. Like,
so thinking of the community as a lineage, and that we have a responsibility to carry on what we learned to a new generation, and that's community, and so we have a responsibility to that.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying for sure, because we're all more or less saying the same thing, like interested in the same thing, and saying this is what we want to learn and what we're interested in. And yeah, now even more so, our responsibility as the people that have the direct experience of practicing with the Sharath Jois or with the Sharath Jois, then we have to figure out how to carry that forward. Like it becomes, well, in my opinion, it's more valuable now than on in that sense, right?
Yeah, there's more of a pull, more of a calling to show up and represent in a way.
Maybe that's just for a while. Maybe who knows what's going to emerge and what's going to happen at the Shala. Maybe it'll be a place we can say again, like, if you go to the Shala, then, or this is the way it is in Mysore.
Yeah.
But right now it's up to us to kind of carry that.
Yeah.
This is the way that we've done it. And we have to actually now defend it in some way based on our own experience of why we do it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was also talking to David, like I study a lot with Jack Cornfield. And so in his teachings, his teacher, Ajahn Chan, has passed away a long time ago. But when he speaks and he says, my teacher would say this, or my teacher taught me this, or this is where I learned it, there was never in my head as a student of Jack Cornfield ever a doubt that this is how it was done. And to me, like, they're also a very interesting group of people. There's Jack Cornfield and Sharon Salzberg and Joseph Campbell. And if you look at that whole bubble of them who were one of the first to go and then bring insightful meditation and Vipassana to the West, like, look, none of their teachers are alive anymore, right? Of course they're not. And the way those teachings and traditions have even become perhaps more popularized around the world now.
Yeah.
Like, of course, they're alive in the home countries where they come from, but now around the world too. And these were all the students of Ajahn Chan or whichever is the other teacher that they studied with. And it never made any of the teachings lesser because there was no chance for me to go and study with Ajahn Chan.
Totally. I think what you're saying is spot on and powerful. The essence is being transmitted in the teaching itself, and it doesn't necessarily need to rely on a place or a center or a person, but it's that you've done the practice and you've studied with that and you've received that transmission, and you, both of you, as all the teachers are who have this seed, are transmitting themselves the teachings. And that's what's actually really important.
Yeah. And then it goes back, I think, to Harmony, what you've been emphasizing too. It's like, and then it's students' responsibility, which I think is so important for students to realize that it is their responsibility. They're the ones that are supposed to do all the work of figuring out who's my teacher, who am I going to follow, do the research, spend time with people, and then choose and stick. And so it just comes back to this circle of, again, like you find the lineage that speaks to you, that will allow you to do the mindfulness practice that you want to do and that you've been drawn to. And then you as a student have to put just as much work as whoever's the teacher holding that lineage alive for you.
100%. Yeah.
Wow.
Otherwise, you don't get anything out of it. You can go study with, I don't know, Richard Freeman all day long, but if you don't do any of the work yourself, you're not really going to get anything out of it.
Listen
right?
to what he's saying.
Or I can come to your room and hang out with you guys, but, if I don't actually get on my mat and start doing something, there's not going to be any transformation that happens.
But I think it also goes back to your question, Russell, about the community. And I get this. I'm really drawn to Jack for many reasons. I've studied with him for quite some time. The emphasis on the Sangha and the importance of Sangha in any spiritual pursuit. And that if you don't have Sangha, you're basically not going to make it. Because Sangha is what gives you the support. And I sometimes see us teachers, that's maybe the most important part of our job, is that one, we create safe, inclusive spaces where everyone feels welcome to show up. But two, that we create this community, or not, we create it by holding that space, like we have the key, but the community creates itself and the community supports itself. And I always think about these change room conversations that you walk into, and how deep and profound they are, and how vulnerable people are, and people in the room practicing and crying. Like, when do you get to just cry and be yourself in the room, and people are going to hold you and be supportive and non-judgmental? And so I think this Sangha is so important. And I think all of us that showed up in February, and not just February, like the 2 months before that as well, in the moments of this deep grief, you become aware of that.
Yeah.
You can lift each other up.
Yeah.
I've often said to people who are thinking about opening up shalas, is like the most important thing you can have is a change room. Yeah. And a change room means that you'll have community, and you'll have people who know each other. And if they know each other, they'll come back.
But Eddie just had that bathroom
for a while. Yeah.
There was a kind of a room, like a open locker. And I once got to see Willem Dafoe's dick in there.
Oh.
Like, I really felt like I was a part of something.
Hopefully
special.
That wasn't brushed with greatness.
There was a brush with greatness, actually. And it was like, I really feel like I have a story that I can keep forever now. Yeah. And I always have a connection to this place, to this temple.
To a special member.
Member. I just really want to say how much I appreciate you guys sharing this. I know you guys were there. And so this is hard. There's some grief to this as well. And being there is different with him than not. So I just want to thank you for having the grace to come on with us.
Thank you very much for having us. I appreciate the topics and the direction it went in. It was good.
Yeah, and the laugh.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing. I think what you're saying about community is really important. And I think teachers also need to have supports and community amongst themselves. And we need to also support each other. That's one thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say was I received a backbend adjustment from you in Mysore, David. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember?
No.
When you were assisting Sharath one year, maybe 2015, 2016. And I got a lovely back massage afterwards. And Sharath,
for that?
Yeah, and Sharath yelled across the room, David, no back massage.
That was probably the thing he said to me the most. Yeah.
And I was like, don't stop, please. Don't stop.
Yeah. No massage. I remember being traumatized by him catching me all the time, shouting that. It was like furtively looking around before I would give people squishes. And I would still, even last time I was assisting him in Miami the past October, and I would still have the same thing would constantly occur to me. And no massage. Yeah.
No massage. It's funny because I often, when I think of you, whenever someone mentions your name to me, I always think, no massage.
You know what was funny? That year, he comes back to the studio and he's like, everyone, like, we've taken this too, because we give people like, you know, like people are living their everyday lives.
We give people massage.
They got to run to work, go pick up the kids, whatever. Like, so we release the back after the back bend. And so David comes back and he's like, no one, anything, just hands, push, 10 seconds, go.
Yeah.
And he was like, so traumatized, literally, for coming back and having been yelled at for a month.
So
then all of us were like, oh, okay, fine. So we start doing that. And at first, all the students were kind of like,
where's my massage?
Where's my massage?
And after a month, our manager starts getting complaints at the front desk.
Oh.
And it first starts with students going over and saying, I think like Jelena's like upset with me, like for a week, like she's just like pushes on me and walks away. And then our manager was like, what? No, that doesn't make sense. But then stories started piling up with basically every teacher and every assistant is mad at someone. And then we realized that it comes back to us. And then the students were just like, no, you need to bring the massages back.
Bring the massage back. Yeah.
And then 2 months later, David was like, oh, okay, fine. Like everyone was complaining to our manager.
You had like a protest.
The same thing happened to me in Taiwan when I was told to stop holding the buttocks of all the students. And I was like, no, Sharath said that I can't do that anymore. But that's the way Batavi Jois taught. You do the back bends, you hold their buttocks really. I said, no. He gave me the waggy finger. Sharath gave me the waggy finger, no more. But then the complaints came in. It's like, well, how come no one's holding my ass after back bends? So
I was coming for that. That's what
I was here for that.
Yeah.
It's been too much fun. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for
Thank
inviting
you.
me.
It's been a real pleasure.
It.
If we ever decide to cross the country, we'll come say hi in person.
These two, yeah, same.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this conversation inspired you to explore how pranayama or breathwork can transform your relationship with stress and support your body through different transitions, hormonal transitions or life transitions. And if today's conversation resonated with you, I'm so excited to share my premier pranayama training and teacher certification course. It's now open for enrollment for this week, Ancient Breathing 2.0. This is an intimate 6-week program where I'm going to guide you through creating a personalized pranayama practice based on your unique constitution and needs. Together, we're going to improve your physical health, deepen your yoga practice, cultivate more emotional stability so you can feel more at ease and truly love your life again. So whether you're dealing with anxiety or disruptive sleep, hormonal fluctuations, or you're simply seeking a deeper connection to that powerful spiritual energy within yourself, this program offers the tools for you to transform your daily experience. You'll receive live community support, at least 6 guided practice sessions, pre-recorded modules, and all the bonus content. There's so much in this program, and this year I'm offering an extension, which is the certification program. So if you want to learn how to help your clients and students with developing their own pranayama practice, this is the program for you. I want you to come inside and sign up. It's open this week, Ancient Breathing 2.0. You can find the link in the show notes. Check it out on harmonyslater.com. And remember, until next time, your breath is always with you. It's your most powerful and accessible tool for finding harmony in everyday life. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.